after lunchtime, so we'll see what happens. Hi, again. I'm Duretti. You can find me on the internet. My handle is my first name, so shout out to my parents for the excellent SEO. If you have questions, you can find me. I do work at Slack. My handle is Duretti there also. I'm a senior backend on the growth team, which I know sounds kind of ironic given how quickly Slack has been growing in the last few years. But our team is focused on two things, which is getting in, which is like making a flawless and kind of seamless sign-up process, and then getting it, which is understanding how Slack, the product, works. So that's the team that I work on, and that's what I'm focused on day in and day out. For those that don't know, Slack is a group messaging app for teams. I've told my parents that it's Chit-chat for work, so your mileage may vary. Here's some numbers. Slack has got about 3 million daily active users. We've convinced 930 of them to pay us, and we've got a little over 500 people working at Slack. All right. So I want you to imagine the last time that you felt excited at work. How did you feel? You probably felt that you were gelling with your team. You were probably feeling that your work had meaning, that you were being impactful, and you probably were well rested. And so how great would it feel to be that way all the time? It'd be great. So the title of this talk is How to Get Engineering Teams to Eat Their Vegetables. And what do I really mean by that? That's kind of like a weird title. And I don't think that it's a secret that the tech industry can be really hard to work in if you're an under-indexed or like a non-standard, like a million scare quotes person. So what I really mean is, how do we get the most people to do their best work? So the focus of this talk is in how to foster excellent working environments with minimal process. The best process is one that we don't feel. And this means we're going to use kind of cultural norms as undocumented process, which can go left. It can be used for evil, but we're going to try and use it for good here. All right, so before we begin, I want you to reach your hand out to me. Research shows that if you extend your hand out, you're more open, and you're more open to information that's being presented. So I want you, for a few seconds, hold your hand out, because I want you to be open to this information I'm going to give you. All right. It's good stuff. I don't want you to miss it. All right, so overwhelmingly, the research points to a few overarching things being important when we think of excellent working environments. Yes, interesting projects are important, and I think as engineers we tend to really zone in on that, but satisfaction, productivity, high performance can all be traced to team dynamics, and dysfunction can too. So we're going to talk about team dynamics. But why is this important? Why do I care about this? Why should you care about this? So for me, it's very personal. I'm a black woman. I'm an engineer. The technology world is not carved for me. And when things go left at work, I never know if it's because I'm a woman in a male-dominated field, or I'm a black person in a not black person field, well, black-dominated field, or if I just didn't understand something, and this doubt radiates through a lot of my interactions in the workplace. And so because I exist in spaces that I shouldn't, and as an engineer, I am a pattern matcher. I'm always looking for what is that right pattern. I'm looking for repeatable patterns that will make me feel more comfortable in the workplace. So my general hypothesis here is that the principles for general engineering happiness in the workplace will correlate to an inclusive environment for all kinds of people. And so the idea is sort of like a rising tide lifts all boats. And one thing that's interesting, I think, is that software is proliferating throughout the world, and we need to consider that tech doesn't only export its products, but its cultures and norms, especially the idea of work and how we get work done. I'm specifically talking about corporate environments, but tech also has this idea of micro-entrepreneurship, and it sells that pretty hard as well, but that kind of has its own set of indignities, but we're going to be focusing on, the corporate environment. So if we realistically expect the world to work the way we work, we should iterate and improve on these processes, because as it stands right now, it's not doing the best it could be. And as we move into the future, a lot has been made about the future of work, and the New York Times Magazine did a whole spread on the future of work, and arguably Slack is lending its voice to this conversation, through our assertion that we're going to be in chat rooms as opposed to email. And practically speaking, coordination is on the rise. A study in the Harvard Business Review found that the time spent by managers and colleagues in collaborative activities has ballooned by 50% or more in the last 20 years. So, we might spend more than 3/4 of our day communicating with our colleagues. When I think about my day, I'm doing a lot of coordinating. I'm in pull requests, I'm spec writing, I'm in meetings, and that's all kind of a collaboration. So if a company wants to outstrip its competitors, it needs to influence not only how people work, but how they work together. And the only thing that I know to be true about software engineering is that it's an intensely coordination-heavy and collaborative process. And, software is kind of the easy part, in my opinion. I never understood why we didn't call software engineering like soft skills. It's in the name. I think the really hard skill is interacting with people. And also, to kind of switch gears a little bit, in the modern context, work provides a great deal of meaning. We make friends. In some cases, we might meet a spouse. It's a secular community. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going to spend my life, like literally my life, my waking hours, my mind space on something, I want it to count. I want it to mean something. And like a society that's based on, the idea of what Noam Chomsky calls it, like Adam Smith's evil maxim, the all for myself and nothing for anyone else, that's a society which normal instincts of sympathy, solidarity, mutual support, those are squashed and they're driven out. And that's ugly, and I don't want to work in a community that doesn't prioritize those things. So I kind of think we shouldn't be striving to suppress our human instincts of community building, vulnerability, and mutual support, but we should be trying to work in concert with them. We should stop fighting our natural instincts. And we shouldn't be labeling them as weaknesses, but what they really are, which I think they're strengths. Okay, that's a lot of information. I want to be clear that there are shadow sides to this talk, and we're going to be discussing them as we go. The slides can look like this. And by shadow, I mean kind of like a dark aspect, like a non-ideal aspect. And the first thing to talk about is a lot of the social research I'm going to present to you is, other people's work, and so I'm not sure what those studies were optimizing for. Also, this is like an idealist pitch. This is like a high watermark, something that we can sort of progress towards. Also, I'm single, I'm straight, I'm cis, I'm child-free. There's a lot of privileges that I have, and so while I'm immensely satisfied by my work, I don't think we should be consumed by work, and I don't think that professional successes are the only successes in life. Speaking of research, these are the books I read, and they're really great. Thanks for the feedback. Smarter, Better, Faster, and Everyone Culture, and Super Better. These are the books I read to construct this talk. Okay, so these are things we're going to continue to talk about, the qualities of a high-performing team, and then practical tips that you can take back with you to work. So firstly, let's define our terms. What's a team? Seems pretty basic. A team is a group of people that get together to work on a shared mission. That's a very broad definition, but it's sort of any group of people that get together to work on a common thing. And teams are the organizing principle of companies. I'm on at least 3 distinct teams where I work, and you might be as well, like more than 3. That's not. And so what are the qualities of a good team? Google's done quite a lot of research about the qualities of a good team, and norms of a team matter a great deal. Norms are very powerful. It's how we as humans enforce and model behavior, and so identifying these norms is key to understanding how to unlock the potential of a group of people. So, firstly, a good norm is enthusiasm and support. A good team wants you to win. They're on your team, they're on your side. They want you to do better, and you want them to do better too. Sense of togetherness. A good team. You're in the trenches together. You feel, that you're working in concert to get something done. And finally, vulnerability. Fostering an environment of voicing your opinions and taking risks without fear of retribution is really important. This is especially important to consider that when people feel safe to report errors, they will. And so vulnerability leads to a learning culture where more information can be spread. In the tech industry, we see this really beautifully expressed by blameless postmortems that come out of Etsy, where they investigate outages or problems without fear, blame, or punishment, because it allows you to sort of sidestep the name, shame, blame game and kind of get to the root cause of an issue. And so that allows, instead of saying like, this was your fault for doing it, it was our fault, and kind of taking more ownership in the identification of structural issues. And ultimately, it does feel refreshing to have this level of vulnerability in your life, especially your working life. And I think a vulnerability is a strength, and it allows us to admit when we're wrong and learn from our mistakes. So these traits, enthusiasm and support, sense of togetherness, vulnerability, at large, it's known as psychological safety, and it allows you to bring more of yourself to work, so you can be like, more self-actualized and more authentically yourself in more places. And so much of work is actually the performance of work. We spend a lot of time image managing and downplaying our perceived weaknesses and playing politics. And it's a full-time job in addition to like all the code that we're shipping. So if we could figure out a way to not be so focused on that and be more honest about our shortcomings, I think we'd get a lot further. So teams then become an amplification of their internal culture. We create our projects, we create our culture, one informs the other, and a team that's enthusiastic, vulnerable, and connected are teams that are more productive. Good teams that are gelled are collectively more intelligent. Research shows that a group of people who are gelled, they make better overall decisions than a collection of smart individuals. And this happens because it takes a lot of bad ideas before you get to a good one, and a good team can rapidly move through lots of bad ideas till they get to that kind of gold nugget, as opposed to a group of individuals that might be really invested in their own idea. And good teams share control. They demonstrate that they are listening, that they care when someone is flustered or upset, they defer to the judgment of other people, and they treat the concerns of others as their own. And so at the end of the day, like that's empathy, that's caring about other people. Also, what's interesting is the things that satisfy you as a person, as an individual, also satisfy your team. So that's what this tautology here means. And what satisfies a team is, believing that your work is important, believing that it's personally meaningful, that you have clear and defined roles, and that you're, psychologically safe. The absence of these qualities can lead to burnout. Kate Houston over here mentions that it's not only, overwork that leads to burnout, it's absence of control, it's insufficient reward, it's a lack of community, and it's an absence of fairness, and then it's like all of the overwork. So we have to consider that as well. All right, shadow side. Psychological safety might not be available to every member of your team. Under-indexed groups like people of color, women, queer folks, trans folks, they may not be able to bring their whole self to work for a variety of reasons, and that's a real shame, and we need to work on making that better. Furthermore, there's a difference between being professional yet vulnerable and like bringing your baggage to work, and so you kind of want to just be your best professional self. All right, cool. So this is where we talk about some of those practical things that you can do. Firstly, do you practice active listening? When someone tells you something, do you give them eye contact? Do you acknowledge it? Do you repeat it back and make sure that they know that you've heard them? It's kind of this cycle of listening. So listening is the baseline of trust and the beginning of a great working team. You can play a game. I know this sounds a bit strange, but Jane McGonigal is the author of that book, Super Better, and she's a neurologist and a game designer. And in her book, Super Better, she lays out a lot of ways that games are surprisingly amazing at fostering human connection. And when people play games together, you become more in sync in a lot of ways. You mirror one another. For instance, you mirror your breath, and your neurons mirror, and it's this really amazing process. And it increases your empathy not only for that person that you're playing that game with, but for that set of people that person is a member of. McGonagall focuses on video games, but these good effects can be felt by playing a game of any sort, playing catch, going for a walk, moving a heavy object. It's anything that needs hand-eye coordination is great for this. Pair programming. I love pair programming. I think it's an amazing way to work. It's very rare that we talk about code in concrete terms. We often talk about it abstractly, like, oh, you're building a house, or we're architecting this thing. Pair programming is a really great way to do nuts and bolts problem solving with your workmates. If you spend time developing, I encourage you to do it. If you manage a team of people, I encourage you to encourage your staff to pair program. It's fantastic. I'm also a setup nerd, so I love to see how, what other people, cool hacks they're doing. I'm like, what is that thing? What is this get where prompts? This is awesome. So I also kind of like to lurk. Better meetings is another thing that you can do. The best meeting is the meeting you don't have, but if you're going to have a meeting, you should practice good meeting hygiene. Ken Norton has written a lot about this, so you can kind of look up him if you want kind of some good tips, but if you're interested in revamping your meeting culture, it's got a lot of good ideas. I'll sum up what I find to be a good meeting. An agenda. Seems very basic, but an agenda gives people a chance to think about what they're going to say, especially for women or more introverted people. It gives you a chance to kind of go away and think about what you're going to say in a meeting. I'm an extrovert. I can talk a mile a minute. I have no problem with that, but not everyone is like me. It's also really great for remote teams so that they can feel, gelled and in concert with your team. Interruption-free meetings are a great idea so that everyone gets a chance to speak. Especially with women, we tend to get interrupted anytime we open our mouth, so it's good to be able to get your whole full thought out before kind of interrupting one another. And then turn-taking kind of follows with that. Good teams have an equality in turn-taking, and they make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. Chit-chat. Okay, so the first 5 minutes of any meeting I've been in recently has just been crosstalk. It's just been, how was your weekend? What happened over here? Tell me about your baby. And that's actually the most important part of a meeting, which is surprising. But it's those first 5 minutes where you find out what's going on in the lives of your coworkers, if they have pets, if they've got vacation planned, all that stuff. It just means that you're genuinely interested in them as humans. And that's the basis for human bonds, is just being interested in another person. And that's how you kind of create an ideal working environment. So effective feedback is important as well. Completing cycles of feedback are important as you grow personally and in a team context, and it helps you avoid falling into stasis. It's also an important mechanism for calibrating your team. Gelled teams exhibit kind of care for one another, which is a breeding ground for good feedback. It's not necessarily a harmful thing giving good feedback. It's a help. If I have food in my teeth, I want you to tell me. And that's the same kind of reasoning with effective feedback. All right, shadow side. You can't make people do what they don't want to do. That's totally a thing with humans. There's research that shows that even when you're making a meaningless choice, that it won't ever affect the outcome, we as humans, we want the choice. We want to make that choice because we all crave autonomy. And giving feedback can be really hard. So, that's probably the hardest thing in the list of things you might try. So the way that things change is a lot of people working all the time in their communities, building up the basis for popular movements. And so I think that all of these things, all this team dynamic stuff, is really important because it's how we move along, it's how we move forward through time. It's very big picture-y, but that's how I feel. All right, we're wrapping up. If there's anything that I want you to remember, it's the following stuff. Productivity is a measure of comfort, and if you're more comfortable at work, you're likely to do better. Good teams unlock a lot of efficiency and productivity, and they're, your secret weapon in moving forward in tech. And, don't suppress your humanity. It's vulnerability, solidarity, mutual support. It's our superpower, and we should use it. And that's all I got, so thanks for listening.